I'm so glad to be with you again. I look forward to these visits each week, and I hope you do too. I have a lot of favorite passages in the Bible, I guess. One of my favorites is in the book of Acts, chapter 16. I'm always excited about the way God was at work in that unique situation as the Apostle Paul and his partner Silas were preaching in another community where they were trying to break open the community for the gospel. And instead, they found themselves, apprehended by the law. They got in that predicament because there was a woman who was really a slave woman being used by her owners in what would be a kind of fortune-telling enterprise. The woman was said to have a familiar spirit. Now, whether there was actually some kind of demonic power operating in her life, or whether she was simply an extraordinarily sensitive personality and got vibrations that other people don't get, I really don't know. Or whether it was simply, on the other hand, that her owners were good showmen. I've seen a lot of circumstances in my life where it was more showmanship than anything else. However it was, the Apostle Paul cast the demon from the woman, and then he and Silas were arrested because these people had lost their source of income. And people never get more angry than when somebody messes around with their source of income. Well, the part that fascinates me about the story is two instances in the story where people show real religion. I am impressed, of course, by someone's testimony of their faith. I'm impressed by all the things we do in the church to show that we have a love for Christ. But what impresses me most is the way people live out their faith in the hurly-burly, the ins and outs, the predicaments of life. And you can see that something has happened to them by the different way that they're living. And I have two instances of it in this story. The first one has to do with Paul and Silas themselves. After they're arrested, it gets rough. The scripture says simply that the magistrates had them stripped of their clothing, bringing them down to just the barest garment, I suspect, and maybe no garment at all, and ordered them to be beaten with rods. That's severe. After they'd given them a severe flogging, the writer of Acts says, they threw them into prison and ordered the jailer to keep them securely. So, following these instructions, he put them in the innermost cell and fastened their feet in stocks. John Wesley, 250 years ago, commenting on this passage, said that the stocks were meant not simply to hold them in place, but to make them uncomfortable as well. So here they are, beaten, bleeding, sore, stripped down, put in stocks, can't get a comfortable position to lie down and fall asleep. So what do? At midnight, they begin singing. They begin praising and thanking God. That's good religion. I don't know whether I have that much religion. I'm not making a statement about my own abilities in this regard. I only know that I admire a faith that is this good, that when everything was against Paul and Silas, what did they do but show how good their religion was? So good, in fact, that they could sing and rejoice and thank God. Bloodied up, hurting, in stocks, they thank God. That's the first example of good religion. The second example comes after God sets them free, and the jailer, fearful for his life, appeals to them. How could he be saved? And they show him the way of salvation. Now, they couldn't tell him a lot in the short time they had, but it's clear that the man got a true religious experience. How do I know it? By the way he acted afterward. For after he had given his life to Christ, the first thing he does is to wash their wounds. This man, the day before, didn't worry at all about their wounds. But now that he's been saved, he cares about the condition they're in, and he washes their wounds, and then he feeds them breakfast. I think that was the greatest communion service you can imagine, when together they sat down to whatever was a breakfast in that part of the world and enjoyed it together. A new believer with the persons who had shown them the way of Christ. But what am I impressed about? That this man, who the day before cared not at all about their sufferings, now that he is born again, the first thing he wants to do is to clean their wounds and give them something to eat. That's good religion. So, with the many things I love about this story, these two examples of good religion impress me especially. And I recommend it to you and to me, the kind of faith that is better than words, better than a protestation. It shows itself in the way we live. God help us, every one of us, to be that kind of people, because that's the kind of people our world needs. That's what's on my mind today, and I am glad I've had a chance to chat with you about it. God bless.